I know how deeply you, the entire nation, and I think I may say the whole world, sympathize with me in the irreparable loss we've all suffered.
If you've spent any time on royal news channels in the last few months, you've probably seen a headline almost exactly like this one. Princess Catherine breaks silence on King Charles's shocking abdication plans. It sounds explosive. It sounds like something happened in the last hour that changes everything about the British monarchy. So let's ask the only question that actually matters before we go any further. Is any of it true? And if it isn't, where did the story actually come from? And what is really going on with King Charles, his health, and the future of the crown? Let's start with the headline itself, because headlines like this one are a genre all their own. Over the past 2 years, dozens of outlets, some credible, many not, have run some version of the phrase King Charles abdication attached to a dramatic claim. Sometimes it's framed as an exclusive. Sometimes it's attributed to unnamed palace insiders. Sometimes it's dressed up with a countdown clock, a breaking tag, or, as in this case, the classic 1 minute ago urgency marker designed to make you stop scrolling. But when you actually trace these stories back to their source, a pattern shows up again and again. Anonymous sourcing, no documentary evidence, and no confirmation from Buckingham Palace, from Kensington Palace, or from the UK government, which would have to be involved in any real abdication process. As of the middle of 2026, there's been no abdication announcement, no instrument of abdication signed, and, this is the important part for today's video, no public statement from Princess Catherine, the Princess of Wales, addressing any abdication plan at all. That specific claim, as stated in headlines like this one, does not check out. So why does this rumor keep resurfacing? And why does it feel so believable to so many people? To understand that, we have to go back to what actually is true about King Charles, because there's a real story underneath the fake one, and it's arguably more interesting. King Charles III was diagnosed with cancer in February 2024. Buckingham Palace announced the diagnosis shortly after doctors discovered it during treatment for a separate, benign condition, an enlarged prostate. From the very beginning, the palace made a deliberate choice that has shaped every abdication rumor since. It declined to specify what type of cancer the king has, or what stage it was caught at. That single decision, to protect the king's medical privacy while still being transparent that a diagnosis existed, created an information vacuum. And in the absence of hard facts, tabloids and royal commentary channels have filled that vacuum for 2 years with speculation, dressed up as insider knowledge. What we do know, because the palace has said it directly, is this. Charles paused most public-facing duties for a short period after his diagnosis in early 2024, then returned to a full schedule within a couple of months, appearing at public engagements, including a church service that Easter. Over the following 2 years, he continued an extensive calendar of official business, state visits, hosting foreign leaders, including a visit from President Trump, ribbon cuttings, garden parties, and the state opening of Parliament, all while continuing treatment. In December 2025, Charles delivered a rare video message announcing that his cancer treatment schedule would be reduced going into 2026. He described it as both a personal milestone and a reflection of medical advances in cancer care, and he used the moment to encourage the public to keep up with cancer screenings, citing the number of people in the UK who miss early detection opportunities. A Buckingham Palace spokesperson clarified something important right afterward. Reducing treatment does not mean the king is in remission. The palace's own language was that he had responded exceptionally well to treatment, and that his care was moving into what they called a precautionary phase, to be continuously monitored. In other words, real, cautiously positive news, but not the dramatic ending or dramatic decline that headline-driven content tends to prefer. That gap between cautiously positive but ongoing health monitoring and shocking abdication is exactly where rumor mills operate, and they've operated consistently. Back in September 2024, tabloid reports claimed Prince William was quietly preparing to take the throne to relieve pressure on his father. The palace's response at the time wasn't a formal denial, so much as simply continuing to show the king actively working, public appearances, engagements with youth charities, preparations for a tour of Australia and Samoa, which royal watchers interpreted as an implicit rebuttal. In February 2026, following the arrest of Charles's brother Prince Andrew, Abdication chatter intensified again, this time tied to the broader institutional crisis around Andrew. Royal commentators reported that senior royals, Camilla, William, Catherine, Princess Anne, and Prince Edward, were consulted in what was described as an emergency meeting, and that abdication was, according to those sources, not even whispered. Instead, the reported message from inside the palace was one of institutional stability. The monarchy would weather the scandal without a change at the top. Then in March 2026, a different flavor of rumor appeared. Not that Charles was being pushed out due to scandal, but that a controlled, dignified transition to William was already quietly underway, being described by some commentators as an inevitability rather than a crisis. Royal watcher Rob Shooter reported palace insiders describing William as already king unofficially in terms of workload, even while stressing that no formal abdication was being discussed. Business outlets covering the same story were careful to note the obvious. No documentary evidence was presented, no parliamentary process had been initiated, and neither Buckingham Palace nor Parliament had confirmed any of it. And then, most recently, in May 2026, another version emerged. A report from a celebrity magazine claiming an official abdication plan was being rehearsed behind palace walls, complete with claims about rehearsals for an accession council and a mock signing ceremony. That story leaned on the same evidence every version of this rumor leans on, an unnamed royal insider, and inference drawn from public appearances, like Prince William and Catherine hosting a garden party. None of it was substantiated by any institution with the authority to confirm it. So here's the pattern worth noticing. Every single one of these abdication stories, across 2 years and at least 5 distinct news cycles, relies on the same structure. Anonymous sourcing, no named officials, no documents, no parliamentary movement, which would legally be required for a UK abdication, and crucially, no statement from the person named in today's headline, Princess Catherine, addressing abdication at all. So what has Catherine actually said publicly? And why might her name get pulled into this kind of headline? The honest answer is that Catherine has her own real, significant health story, which likely makes her a magnet for this kind of misleading pairing. In March 2024, around the same window as her father-in-law's diagnosis, Catherine announced she was undergoing cancer treatment herself, disclosed in a personal video message after a period of public speculation about her whereabouts following abdominal surgery. Over the following year, she stepped back substantially from public duties while undergoing chemotherapy, returned gradually to selected engagements, and by January 2025 she announced that she was in remission. In her own words at the time, she expressed gratitude to everyone who had supported her and her husband through the experience. That is a real, on-the-record personal statement about her own health, not about the king's succession plans. It's not hard to see how a content creator looking for engagement might take a real headline about Catherine. Princess Catherine says X about her health, and graft it onto an unrelated, more sensational rumor about the king, creating a hybrid headline that sounds like she's commenting on something she has never actually commented on. It's also worth noting the family's public behavior around events that might, in a genuine crisis, prompt some kind of statement. When William and Catherine skipped the royal family's Easter service in both 2024 and 2025, choosing to stay privately with their children in Norfolk instead, tabloids treated the absences as loaded with meaning. In reality, those absences lined up neatly with the family prioritizing Catherine's recovery and their children's routine during an unusually difficult stretch, not with any succession maneuvering. Now let's talk about what an actual abdication would require, because this is the part almost none of these viral stories bother to explain, and it's genuinely useful to understand. Abdication is not simply a personal choice a monarch announces in a video message. The only modern precedent in British history is King Edward VIII in 1936, who abdicated to Mary Wallace Simpson, a divorced American. That abdication required a specific piece of legislation, the Declaration of Abdication Act 1936, passed by Parliament, because the monarch's position is defined by statute, not merely by personal will. It also required coordination across the Commonwealth realms, since the monarch is head of state in multiple countries, not just the UK. In modern terms, if Charles were to abdicate, it would trigger a similar legislative process, An instrument of abdication would need to be signed. Parliament would need to pass enabling legislation. And, because the monarch is head of state of more than a dozen Commonwealth nations, including Canada, Australia, and others, many of those governments would need to formally recognize the transition as well. This is meaningfully different from a European model like Denmark's, which several of these tabloid stories actually reference. Queen Margrethe II of Denmark abdicated in 2023 in favor of her son, now King Frederik X, and did so relatively smoothly, because Danish and British constitutional structures around monarchy differ. Commentators drawing a straight line from Margrethe's abdication to a prediction that Charles would do the same are making a comparison that doesn't actually map cleanly onto UK law. There's also a practical, human reason floated by royal commentators for why an abdication remains unlikely even if Charles's health were to decline further. The monarchy in Britain, since 1936, has treated abdication as something close to institutionally taboo, a reminder of the one moment the House of Windsor's stability was shaken from within, rather than by outside events. Royal historians and commentators have repeatedly noted that the family's instinct in moments of crisis, including the recent scandal involving Andrew's legal troubles, has been to compartmentalize the individual crisis rather than restructure who holds the crown. A senior source quoted by one outlet summarized the institutional mindset bluntly. You don't dismantle the monarchy's leadership because one member of the family is in trouble. If Charles's health were to decline to the point where he genuinely could not perform his duties, a different and more clinical question than abdication, the existing constitutional mechanism isn't abdication at all, but regency, under the Regency Acts, that would allow Prince William, as heir, to act on the king's behalf without any change in who legally holds the crown. This is a meaningfully different outcome from what viral headlines describe, and it's one that requires a formal medical and parliamentary process of its own, not a private family decision announced via press release. So, pulling all of this together, what can we actually say, responsibly, right now? In the middle of 2026, King Charles has a real, ongoing cancer diagnosis, disclosed transparently in 2024, with treatment recently described by the palace as moving into a reduced, precautionary phase. Good news, but explicitly not framed by the palace as remission. Princess Catherine has her own separate, real cancer story, including a disclosed remission in January 2025, and no public statement whatsoever addressing her father-in-law's succession plans. Multiple abdication rumors have circulated repeatedly since 2024, consistently sourced to anonymous insiders, consistently unconfirmed by any palace or government statement, and consistently contradicted by the king continuing an active public schedule. And the legal reality is that any actual abdication would require an extraordinary formal process last used in 1936, not a quiet announcement, and certainly not a single interview from Catherine. None of this means royal reporting should be dismissed wholesale, or that health concerns around a 77-year-old cancer patient aren't worth covering seriously. They are. The king's age, his ongoing treatment, and the long-term question of succession are legitimate, important subjects, and outlets that cover them with named sources, actual palace statements, and appropriate caution are doing real journalism. The problem isn't that people are curious about King Charles's health or the future of the monarchy. That curiosity is completely reasonable. The problem is headlines engineered to sound like breaking news about a specific person's specific statement, when neither the statement nor the underlying event has actually happened. If you want to follow this story responsibly going forward, the most reliable approach is simple. Wait for language from the palace itself, from named royal correspondents at established outlets, or from Parliament, rather than reacting to headlines built around words like shocking, 1 minute ago, or break silence, attached to a claim that, on inspection, no named person has actually made. The real story of King Charles's health, his cancer treatment, and how the British monarchy would handle succession is genuinely compelling on its own. It doesn't need an invented quote from Princess Catherine to be worth paying attention to, and treating rumor as confirmed fact is a disservice both to her and to the actual, complicated, human situation the royal family is navigating in public. That's the real story behind the headline. Thanks for watching, and if you want, I can also put together a companion piece on what UK succession law actually says step by step, or a timeline specifically tracking every abdication rumor from 2024 to today.